Hey everybody. So I just read a beautifully written essay called Consider the Lobster by David Foster Wallace. A link to this essay will be in the description as well as all the quotes that I'm citing. So the juicy part of this essay is pages 5, 6, and 7. But first, we're going to go through the first 4 pages. Here, over 80,000 people come to this festival themed as lighthouses, laughter, and lobster. And he also describes a variety of ways in which it can be eaten. So following this, he gives us like encyclopedic knowledge about the lobster, such as that they are marine crustaceans. They are the hunters and scavengers of the sea. He calls them like the garbage men of the sea because they eat all the dead stuff. And actually in the 1800s, they were considered to be like low-class food because they were available in unbelievable abundance. And funny thing, in the prison system in America in the 1800s, they had laws against feeding inmates lobsters more than once a week because it qualified as a cruel and unusual punishment. And so that seems pretty funny today, you know? And he then describes the eating environment of the of this lobster festival. But he's not a big fan of it. So the lobster is served on styrofoam trays. The soft drinks are flat and iceless. They don't give you enough napkins. It's a pretty grim description of the whole festival's eating arrangement. He then details the different ways that a lobster can be cooked. So, for example, it can be baked, broiled, steamed, grilled, sauteed, stirred, and even microwaved. But the most common approach is boiling. And he then gives us some cooking suggestions. And here's a quote at the end of the third page, which is a detail so obvious that recipes don't even bother to mention it, is that the lobster is supposed to be alive when you put it in the kettle. This is part of the lobster's modern appeal. It's the freshest food there is. So he describes the festival in a number of ways, such as the activities, the eating arrangements, as well as the cooking methods. And he also gives us some fun facts about the creature at hand. And so that's the first 3 pages. And they serve as to provide context to this upcoming question. All right, so right now we're at page 4, and this is when the real question comes, and it's beautifully put. So I'm going to quote here, is it all right to boil a sentient creature alive just for a gustatory pleasure? A related set of concerns. Is the previous question irksomely PC or sentimental? What does all right even mean in this context? Is it all just a matter of individual choice? So basically, is it morally acceptable to boil a lobster alive? In page 5, we go deeper. How do different animals feel pain? So first, he states that pain is subjective. You can't feel another human's pain, let alone another animal's pain. So what makes this process different than buying a fillet of salmon at the grocery store is that you're actually putting a live lobster in a pot of boiling water yourself because you enjoy eating the little thing. And so we're not used to that like real connection to our food. So I don't know when you're watching this, but here in the 21st century, recorded in 2020, in the past 100 years, we've seen a huge population boom of humans. And one of the things that have made this possible is new farming techniques so that we can produce food at larger quantities. And one of the effects of this is that we're disconnected from our food. So for example, I've eaten a lot of chicken in my life, never killed one, you know? And so to highlight this unpleasant experience, he compares the main lobster festivals. Well, first off, in the main lobster festival, they have an attraction. It's called the world's largest lobster cooker. And it's basically a big vat of lobsters that are cooked. And he compares this to I'm just gonna quote him. Try to imagine a Nebraska Beef Festival at which a part of the festivities is watching trucks pull up and the live cattle get driven down a ramp, slaughtered right there in the world's largest killing floor. So that's not really a family-friendly activity, you know? But this lobster festival is, and so why? What's the difference between between a lobster and a cow. So here, at page 7 at the end, he makes a noteworthy point that which is that he connects suffering with a connection to preference. And so, for example, in that pot of boiling water, that lobster might prefer to be in a pot of water that isn't boiling, you know? And his the other side of this example has to do with a worm. And so basically, if you cut certain species of worms in half, they don't have a preference. They don't, because they're just gonna keep that. You just have 2 worms now, you know? They're gonna keep on being worms. And yeah, basically worms don't show any preference. And so we assume that because of this, they don't suffer. So all this said and done, the way that he writes I think is amazing. I really enjoyed reading this article. The essay is about 7 pages long, and it took me 45 minutes to read. And yeah, check it out. Check it out.